uniformed officer, General Randy George, who served as the Army's chief of staff. The New York Times reports that the move, quote, reflects growing hostility between Hegseth and the Army's leadership. Now, nobody is suggesting this will have any impact on any moves that are made in terms of the safe return of those Americans. But overall, in a time of war, what does it mean if the Secretary of Defense has such a troubled relationship with a critical branch of the military?
Well, it creates risks and questions about our ability to operate. I think that, without question, our military is the best in the world. They're the best trained and the most capable. And I have complete and total confidence in their ability to do this kind of mission and in their ability basically to conduct this war. But it doesn't help when at the same time that you are at war, the Secretary is undermining the leadership at the military. I think it makes a lot of sense to be able to continue to rely on those leaders who are in place because they are experienced, because they have the respect of the men and women that they command, and because they know what needs to be done. And if you're moving the leadership around at a time of crisis, you're basically weakening your ability to be able to respond quickly with a great deal of experience, with a great deal of capability, and with the kind of dedication that our military has. I think this is a time when he should be relying on our military leaders, not kicking them out.
We just got some breaking news, so let me ask you about this, Secretary Panetta. This is from Julia Jester, our reporter at the Pentagon. One F-15E crew member has been rescued. Search operations are still underway for the second. Now, thank God, we have one crew member who is safe. That's according to 2 U.S. officials we've spoken to. But this is specifically what I want to ask you about. The other crew member of the 2-seat fighter jet is still missing and has been declared Dust 1, meaning duty status, whereabouts unknown. What else does that tell us?
It tells us that we really don't know where that pilot is located and whether that pilot is even alive. It's very good news that we've been able to rescue one of those pilots, because that tells us that we have some pretty good intelligence about where that individual was located and our ability to be able to go in quickly and rescue that individual. What it does do is raise concerns that if the other pilot is not in the same region, that pilot right now is much more difficult to locate in terms of what has happened. So we just have to keep our fingers crossed that we continue to get good intelligence. We've already rescued one pilot. We ought to have the capability to go in and try to determine, hopefully, where the other pilot may be located.
I should read one more sentence from this statement that was given to us for context, that this indicates the U.S. military does not have reason to believe at this time that the second U.S. service member has been captured. Can they say that at this point with any degree of certainty?
Not really. I don't think we know. I don't think we know. If the Iranians have in fact captured them, they're going to hold that pretty tight to make sure that that it doesn't leak and that they then make maximum propaganda use of that individual. So we really don't know. We really don't know. This is a war situation. There are a lot of things going on. It's very difficult. I've always found when it comes to these kinds of operations that it's very difficult to have a sense of just exactly what's happening. You know, you can be in touch. You can even use drones to try to figure out what they're doing. But the reality is that only the people who are there in the air, on the ground, they're the ones that know what's happening. And they're the ones we have to rely on to exercise the experience that they've been trained to implement. They're the ones that are in charge of what happens or doesn't happen.
Well, Chris, can I go back to what David said about all the training that has been gone through? And I just wonder if you've ever gone through that type of training and what more specifically you can tell us about it.
Yeah, so SEER School is something that all pilots go through and their crews or intelligence professionals who ride in the back of the aircraft and special operations forces, specialized units. So I went through as a member of that. You go through alongside the pilots. And it's the same training, but David laid it out perfectly. How do you survive once you hit ground? It was actually created in Vietnam because all the pilots that were shot down in North Vietnam, they had no training, and there was one particular famous Special Forces officer, Colonel Nick Rowe, that the school's actually named after. He escaped hundreds of miles of jungle to do this. So you learn how to survive off the land. You learn how to hide, conceal yourself. You learn how to link up with partisan forces or sympathetic locals if that's, in an area that you're in. These pilots likely have what's called a blood chit, which has got different languages in it and allows them to point to it because they can't speak the local dialect. It tells who they are and that they'll be rewarded if they help them.
Can I just ask you on that point, how do they know who might be friendly and who's not?
So that's difficult. They're trained to assess situations and determine, like, the pilots aren't there by accident. They know the area they were flying over. They're briefed by the intelligence professionals before they fly out what the situation is on the ground in case you have something like this happen. So the evade is evading capture. So you're looking for local patrols or security forces, and how do you evade them? Resist is David talked about. If you do get captured, how do you resist the interrogation techniques and stay to your code of conduct? It's called. You memorize what your code of conduct is, and then eventually you escape. It is your duty to escape if you can, and all these pilots know that. I mean, these are people who are committed to the safety of the nation, and as tragic as this is, they've prepared for this, and all of their teammates are surging to try to find them and rescue them.
So, Josh, what are the protocols for a mission like this? What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I just spoke with two military officials who described some of this process that Chris and David have been laying out. But essentially, they have been well trained in what to do, and so have the other components of the rescue mission that is activated really as soon as they find out that something like this has happened. And so in the air, they are likely to have a flying command center with an on-the-scene commander who's sort of coordinating this. That aircraft will likely have refueling capabilities for some of the search and rescue helicopters we've already seen on social media, some of that refueling apparently taking place. Those aircraft will be able to fly low to actually identify, hopefully, these troops. There will also be close air support that can target any Iranian units that might show up on the scene. And then there are likely to be para-rescuers who could either jump or quickly rope down from some of those helicopters to try to obtain and rescue those soldiers. They likely have the ability to hoist people up from the ground if they need to. And then the troops themselves, these pilots, will be heavily equipped with the kind of technology that can aid in this. Not only the beacons that can signal their locations, but also radios that they can use if they need to. They may hold off on that initially because of the ability for the Iranians to detect that radio transmission, which could potentially make it easier for the Iranians to find and capture them. And then they likely will also have on them some type of small arms, a handgun or something that they could potentially use to defend themselves if they end up in a close combat situation.
So, Chris, we don't know what any of what's coming out of the Iranian news outlets is true, but what is coming out is, again, that the aircraft, including a C-130, came under enemy fire. Talk about the dangers for the rescuers. Again, best in the world, heavily trained. They know that they have the background for a mission like this, but what are the real danger points?
Well, I think this really highlights why you don't minimize going to war and call it an excursion or the gamification of it. The enemy has a vote. I've been to war a few times now, and people shoot at you. And just military operations, especially aircraft operations, are inherently dangerous, even during training. So whether it was a malfunction, mechanical, or it was brought down as a result of enemy.
And yet, what did we see under the Trump administration? A constant, relentless purge, a revolving door of generals and top brass who dared to disagree, who prioritized strategy over personal loyalty. This isn't abstract. This is about real lives, real missions, and national security. When you're at war, you rely on experienced military leaders. You don't sideline them. You don't fire them. In the middle of escalating global tensions, with troops deployed, the commander-in-chief was undermining the chain of command. That's not just bad leadership. That's a direct threat to service members and mission success. The military runs on structure, experience, and trust. When you remove seasoned professionals because they won't fall in line, you're not just creating tension, you're dismantling the system designed to protect us. And for what? Because these leaders understood war isn't a reality show. You don't win by being loud. You win with strategy, discipline, and experience. You don't run a military like a family business. These aren't replaceable people. These are experts whose decisions mean life or death. And this isn't speculation, it's documented. The turnover, the public attacks, the loyalty tests over competence. From General Mattis to General Kelly, the pattern is clear. Experienced leadership pushed out. Now fast forward, we have a missing American pilot. This is where it becomes real. This is where those decisions matter. Because when leadership is weakened at the top, that weakness spreads. It affects coordination, it affects response time, it affects outcomes when seconds matter. Think about what was lost. Experience, trust, relationships. When leadership is fractured, rescue missions don't run at full strength. They run with friction. Our military is the best in the world, but even the best need strong leadership. And when that leadership is compromised, you're putting those heroes at greater risk. Here's the gap no one is saying. This isn't just people got fired. This is the people who could manage a crisis like this are no longer there. That's the connection. That's the consequence. And it's measurable. High turnover in critical leadership leads to lower efficiency, lower morale, and higher risk. Not theory, fact. You can't swap generals like chess pieces without consequences. These are strategic minds. Removing them for political reasons weakens national defense. And now we're in a moment that demands precision, speed, and coordination. So the real question is, was the best possible leadership in place when this happened? Or are we dealing with the aftershocks of decisions made earlier? Because this isn't about politics in a vacuum. This is about real-world consequences. Leadership matters, experience matters, stability matters. And when those are compromised, the cost isn't theoretical, it's immediate. This isn't just a story about a missing pilot. It's a story about what happens when leadership is weakened. And the bill comes due. So if this kind of breakdown matters to you, real consequences, not headlines, this is what we do here. Subscribe to Partisan Pulse. Like, comment, and share this with someone who needs to see it. Because the truth behind these decisions, it impacts all of us.